Hey, it's James, and in this video I am going to reflect on part of my 2017 school year experience by talking about my return to the classroom last school year. I figured since part of last year was in 2017, and with the year coming to an end, I might as well talk about it, especially since I've been procrastinating and pushing this video topic back at this point. So let me go ahead and get started. So last year I returned to the classroom during the 2016-2017 school year after being gone for 6 years in various instructional leadership positions as a science specialist and then as a campus AP assistant principal at my current campus. And I made the decision to return because every time I was doing an observation or I did a co-teach, I really missed the classroom. Last year was like my first year teaching all over again. Like, it really was. Besides the fact that I, came in and I was rusty and I was having to try to find my teaching mojo again, which literally took me almost until the end of the school year where I felt I was at maybe 75%. I just had a very difficult transition back into the classroom. One of the reasons why was a lot of the instructional strategies I either had to retool because they didn't work, or I had to toss out completely because, again, it was just a different time culture that I was dealing with. For example, most of the students my first go around in teaching, they had flip phones. Maybe only 1 or 2 students had a smartphone. Fast forward to present time and all students have a smartphone, and it just was an issue even for some of my students that were academically and or behaviorally well prepared or mannered. They had issues with their phones, and quite frankly I don't blame them, because if I was going to school during this time, I would have been playing games on my phone too. So I had to deal with that, also with the fact that relationship wise between the students, at the very beginning of the school year, like, I noticed students would come into class and they'd be like this on their phone. They'd go have a seat and they'd still be doing that on their phone until, like, I had to tell them, I need for you to put the phone away. Whereas years ago when I was in the classroom, students would come in, they would have a seat at their group and they would at least talk to people at their group, even if they didn't hang with those individuals outside of class. So I had to learn to build relationships among students that perhaps didn't have those skills. So that was another challenge that I faced. Another challenge was the fact that I was teaching 2 preps. One of the preps was biology, which, while that's my major, I hadn't taught that in over 10 years, and it just was difficult. While on my campus we have a shared drive of activities, a lot of the activities either they didn't have answer keys or they didn't have instructions that went along with the activities. So either I was trying to figure out what the answer key was or what the activity, how that went, or I spent time trying to develop new activities myself. The other course that I taught was environmental systems, which at my campus we use environmental systems to really, for any student coming in from middle school, to help them if they have like a poor science background, a foundation, to at least help them mature as 9th graders, but then also if they struggle or they have a weak science background, to help build them up so that when they take biology their sophomore year, they can be successful on the end of course exam, because biology is a state tested subject area. Biology, US history, algebra 1, English 1, English 2, students have to take those tests. So with the stress of teaching biology, that being a tested subject area, and anybody who's ever taught a tested subject area will know, especially if you teach at a Title I campus, that oftentimes is viewed as a low performing campus when compared to other schools in the district. That can be very stressful. With environmental systems, that course is one of 2 courses on my campus that has been acknowledged as being one of the tougher courses just because of the nature of the students that are placed into the class. Now, one of my environmental systems classes, the students didn't talk to each other at all. Like, it was crickets. Like, I would tell jokes. I would try to get them to collaborate because I do a lot of collaborative activities. If you've seen any of my vlogs, you'll know that, or at least in some of them, that I have shown that my students are working together, doing stations or doing other things. And nope. Students would just sit there, they look at each other, or they start working individually, and I had to do a lot of work to just even have them partner up with somebody to get them to work on doing something. So a lot of the collaborative activities that I had wanted to do, the station activities, just didn't work out because the students, it just was a lot of time and effort trying to get them to work with one another, or just even talk with one another. On the flip side, I had another class where they talked a lot, and not that talking is a bad thing, but it was one of those classes where like literally I was reaching into my classroom management tool bag and trying to like pull out, you know, I was having to redirect often, you know, and I often felt bad because there were students in that class, and I should say it was a 50-50 inclusion class, so half of the students received special education services and half the students didn't. And again, it was a hodgepodge. There were students who received services and did not, that were behaviorally great or academically great, did well, and then students that received services or didn't receive special education services that were challenged academically and or behaviorally. So a lot of times I felt bad because there were students in class that really wanted to learn, but I was always, every couple of minutes I had to stop and redirect a class. It wasn't like this all the time, but last year with all the things that were going on my return back, it felt like it was happening every single day, where I was like, oh, could you come please sit back in your seat? You know, when I come back around, I need for, you know, 10 minutes have passed. I need for you to make sure that you're not still on number one. Could you go outside? Could you not throw that across the room? It was a lot of that. One of the reasons I procrastinated or really pushed making this video back, because the top stressor involved a colleague. Now, I normally don't talk about a colleague, but this happens to have involved one of the reasons I was stressed out, and I just didn't really have a great year last year because I had to every other day work with this particular individual in this already difficult class. And we were supposed to co-teach together. Without going into too much detail, let me just explain. So at the very beginning of the year, when I met this person, the first time I met, they were in my classroom, and I was excited, you know, because I had all these ideas and I shared these ideas, and this person just knocked every single idea down. Fine, I'm grown, it's not gonna hurt my feelings, and I'm always open to feedback and ideas and suggestions anyways, because I'm always trying to grow, and anybody who's ever worked with me knows that I'm that way. So okay, fine. As the year progressed, I noticed that this person would sometimes make comments to students that would get them riled up, or they would make comments to me that were abrupt, or they would roll their eyes at me or snicker at me, to the point where it was in front of the students, and just because of the nature of the class, students would see this and they would try to get a response out of me like, ooh, did you see that? And I would just ignore them and I would continue on. And in the beginning, I thought, okay, well, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm a little bit sensitive. I don't know what it is. I'm imagining things. But then, you know, I found out that this particular person had rubbed another individual or two the wrong way. And so, okay, maybe it's not me. Long story short, we had to have a meeting towards the end of the school year. It was the end of the 5th 6 weeks, and we're about to enter the last grading period of the school year. And it was at this meeting that I realized this person, this entire time, well, I sort of felt this, but it was in that moment that I realized, like, this person was never working with me. They were always working against me. You know, when someone is blaming me for students failing the class, or 2 students fell in my class, in the first 6 weeks grading period, and we're almost at the end of the school year, and at no point did this particular person bring this up to me when we were working together. Like, if they had ideas for instructional strategies for supporting the students, or if they had concerns, they surely didn't address it with me during the first 6 weeks. But now, suddenly in this meeting, because they've had issues with me, they're trying to, you know, project. And perhaps there were other things going on, I don't know, but they were projecting all this stuff on me, that it was my fault that these students failed. And technically, since this person was my co-teacher, we were both responsible for the success of the students in the classroom. So really, it was both of our faults if this person wanted to blame me for these 2 students failing the class. The issue, like, my pay got brought up. It's like, why? First of all, it's not relevant to why we were meeting. And secondly, it's none of your business what I'm getting paid. Now, you know, the person thought I was making more money based on the position that I had, which I wasn't. But again, it wasn't relevant to the discussion, and it had no bearing on why we're meeting, and it was none of that person's business. This person also, like, thought I should have extra responsibilities that weren't even in my job description. And, you know, it's like, you're not even my supervisor, so, like, what business do you have to say, like, what I should and shouldn't be doing in terms of my job responsibilities? And so that's just what I was dealing with. Other things were like, oh, gossiping. Like, I found out, like, this in the meeting, like, all this stuff was coming up, and at the end of the day, like, if my colleagues are talking negatively about me, it's of no consequence to me, whether they think of, no matter what they think of me doing the vlog, doing teacher paid teachers. If it's not paying my bills, has nothing to do with my health. It's not helping me become a better teacher. Again, it's of no consequence to me. But in the course of this meeting, I found that this person was gossiping about me, taking items that belonged to me and giving them to other teachers. It was just all this stuff that was not relevant to what we were meeting. And just other stuff that went on. So it stressed me out last school year. So basically at the end of the meeting, the person was like, I can't work with him anymore. The mediator looked at me and said, what would you like to do? And I just said, well, you know, I want to make sure that I'm respecting the person's wishes. If this person is saying that they don't want to work with me anymore, then I don't want to say, yes, let's continue working. If that person's miserable, it's just going to make me miserable, more miserable than I already am in this relationship that I, you know, dealt with the entire school year in an already stressful situation. So I'm going to terminate the working relationship. I ended up getting a new co-teacher, and it was like night and day. Like, the students got along with this, really enjoyed this new person. Even this person, before we actually started working together, found me and was like, I'm really excited to work with you. You know, please let me know if there's anything, like any feedback that you can give me. And I'm the same way. Like, if there's anything that you can tell me to help me grow, get me to think about my teaching, then I take that in. Regardless if maybe once in a while it will sting, if I know that it's coming from a good place and it's going to help me, then great. So me and this person got along great. The students liked this person, and really the school year ended great with this particular class, because it just, the overall climate of the classroom and just of the culture of the classroom, I would say, just changed once we got this new person in. Switching topics now, I also made the stupid mistake of taking 2 classes in the fall semester, because I was working on making sure that my Spanish was grammatically correct. So I was taking these 2 advanced Spanish courses to work on that, and they were accelerated. And I would have to drive downtown. Class started at 6, ended at 9:50, and the highway that I needed to take to get home, there was construction going on because they were expanding it to 4 lanes. So I would literally be stuck in traffic because they would reduce the highway down to 1 lane. So I wouldn't get home until after maybe 10:30, 10:50. This is after I stopped at Starbucks to get a drink and to get dinner, which was like a pastry. And then I'd come home and stay up until 1, sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning, planning for the next day. And in the beginning of the year, it was a lot of that. Like, I felt, again, like a first year teacher. Now I was a little bit more prepared in the sense where, like, my first year teaching, I would come to school, and that morning I'm like, I have no idea like how I'm presenting this material. Like, I don't even have copies made. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. It wasn't like that last year. It was just more of like, I would stay up making these things because, as I said earlier, while we had a shared drive, a lot of stuff didn't have directions, or I was busy trying to figure out like how I was going to use this and making directions up myself, or I was creating something new. So like, I was just tired. Lunch would come around, so during my lunchtime I was either trying to prepare for my next prep. After lunch, I was either doing my advanced Spanish homework, or I was taking a 10-minute power nap because I stayed up until like 1 or 3 o'clock in the morning, getting new coffee, getting more coffee, running down to the copy machine to make copies for the next class. Sometimes, because I was so cognitively focused on just I was in survival mode basically, that I would sometimes forget to eat my lunch. Even though I brought my lunch and I had a mini refrigerator in my classroom, I would just, because I was just on 24/7, you know, on just like autopilot, like I would forget, oh, I brought my lunch, forgot to eat lunch until like school was over. So it was just one of those things where it just wasn't, it wasn't a really positive experience. And I was always coming into work trying to cheer myself up, because I think I said this even earlier in one of my other vlogs this school year, like, if you harbor the negative feelings, it's only going to manifest itself. So I always came in, okay, this is going to be a better day, this is going to be a better day. And again, for the most part, the days were great. It was just some of the smaller, like, behind the scene things outside of the classroom that made it difficult last school year. And then besides that one difficult class. And then the other thing that I found a little bit weird was that there were some people who were very abrupt with me when I was an administrator. And then suddenly when I became a teacher, it was like, oh, hi, how are you doing? Good morning. Hey, let me give you this present. Let me give you these things. And it's like, where was this person at when I was an administrator? And then there were people who talked to me when I was an administrator or a science specialist who no longer talked to me once I became a teacher, and or they were rude to me. And I don't know if that's because on the hierarchy level, I was always up here when they knew me, and then suddenly I'm on the same playing field. So it was this people, and I don't know like if they were intentionally being rude, But you know, when it was happening time and time again, or like I would I would share ideas and then notice that my ideas that I had shared, because I wasn't trying to overstep bounds in terms of leadership, because I was also a leader, that certain people weren't sharing the ideas in the meeting, and I'm just like, okay, you know what, like I'm just gonna, you know, take a back seat. You know, if people have their own ideas and they want to use those when they're leading, then so be it. Like I'm not going to overstep boundaries and things like that. So, you know, on a more positive note, towards the end of the school year, like once I felt like I was at 75%, I did end on a very positive note. And again, the school year wasn't that horrible. It's just I was in survival mode the entire time. And it just, I felt like a first year teacher again, with just all the experience and the knowledge of a veteran teacher. And I was just trying not to compare myself to when I was last in the classroom. And it just was a very difficult time. And I think maybe people thought like I was doing okay, but just I like literally was struggling and getting very little sleep and sometimes not eating. And it just was, it was a place that I don't ever want to be. And so like if you see my vlogs, you probably seem like I'm very organized, or I tend to be very organized, and that's because after my original time in the classroom, after my first year teaching, those experiences, I hated that. Like my anxiety level was at an all-time high, and even just like last year having to relive and remind myself of what it was like, it just wasn't a really great place to be. And so I tend to be organized so that way I'm never in a situation like I was my first year teaching, and certainly not like I was last school year. So that's my 2016-2017 school year in a nutshell. I left some stuff out, but for the most part, like I said, there were some things that were not directly in the classroom that were affecting me. But this school year is going a lot better, and I don't ever want to go back to how it was last school year or my first year of teaching. Well, that's it. If you're interested in checking out some of my other videos, you can do so by clicking on any of the links right here. If there was anything about this particular video that you liked, then make sure to hit that like button, comment down below, and or share the video. And if you haven't already done so, make sure to subscribe so that way you can bond with James. As always, thanks for watching.